The morning had started the way most family picnics do: too many bags, forgotten bug spray, a cooler packed with more food than needed, and children arguing over who got to carry the Bluetooth speaker. The Weston family had driven 2 hours out to Silverpine National Park, a sprawling preserve thick with century-old oaks, hidden creeks, and trails that hadn't been updated on maps since the early 80s. It was warm that day, an uncharacteristically dry spring morning that gave the illusion of safety in the wilderness. Clara and June were the youngest of the group. Clara was 11, freckle-faced and bold, the kind of girl who would jump into a lake before anyone had unpacked towels. June was 9, quieter, gentler, always trailing a few steps behind her older sister. They were nearly inseparable that year. When Clara ran, June followed. When June cried, Clara took her hand. No one ever imagined that Silverpine would pull them both into silence. They reached the picnic clearing just before noon. There were 12 of them, aunts, uncles, cousins, and both Weston parents. Blankets were unfurled. Sandwiches passed around. For a while, the forest was filled with laughter and the clink of soda cans opening. Clara had been the first to suggest exploring. "Just the edge of the woods," she said, already tugging June along. Their mother, distracted with unpacking plastic plates, waved without looking. "Stay close." They never came back. At first, no one noticed. With so many kids running around, it took nearly 30 minutes before anyone realized Clara and June hadn't returned. By then, the forest had already grown quieter. The sun dipped slightly past the trees, and shadows lengthened. The mood shifted. People started calling. First casually, then more urgently. By the time park rangers arrived, the family had fanned out in 5 directions, voices hoarse from yelling their names. There were no screams. No sounds of distress. Just silence. One cousin said he thought he'd heard giggling from behind the tall grass, but when he ran toward it, there was nothing. Just an old oak with a blackened scar on its trunk. It didn't look like it belonged there. Search dogs were brought in by sunset. Helicopters circled. Dozens of volunteers joined the following day. Rangers marked trees with tape, spreading deeper and deeper into the forest. But nothing was ever found. No shoe prints. No fabric. No broken twigs. As if the forest had simply closed its jaws and swallowed the girls whole. The media pounced on the story. The Weston sisters' disappearance made headlines across the state. Reporters dubbed them the Ghost Girls of Silverpine. Psychics came forward. Tips poured in. But each clue was a dead end. Every lead faded into more questions. The girls had vanished in a place filled with people, yet no one had seen them leave. The Weston family never recovered. Their mother stopped speaking for weeks. Their father turned the family basement into a wall of maps, red string connecting sightings that never happened. The forest was blamed, but eventually, people stopped looking. Theories changed. Kidnapping. Animal attack. Abduction by someone hiding in the woods. But not one theory explained how 2 young girls vanished with no sound, no trace, and no struggle. And as years passed, Silverpine grew silent again. The trees kept growing. The blackened oak remained. And 11 years later, far from the forest and long after the world had forgotten, a man named Aaron Locke stood by that same oak, his boots sinking into moss-covered soil, holding a rusted compass in one hand and an old leather map in the other. He wasn't looking for lost girls. He was hunting something else entirely. But what he would find, buried beneath the ground and tied to a symbol scorched into the side of that very oak, would crack the case wide open. And unearth something no one was prepared to believe. The second the girls went missing, the Weston family began to fracture in ways that no one could reverse. In the early days, everyone clung together, drawing strength from shared grief, trading stories, and reliving memories of Clara's stubborn grin or June's sleepy laugh. But unity doesn't survive prolonged uncertainty, it erodes, splinters, and turns to blame. Police interviews started polite but turned invasive. Questions about the parents' marriage. Who had last seen the girls? Why nobody noticed sooner? There was tension in every pause, every sideways glance. Was it really just a family picnic gone wrong, or was someone in the Weston bloodline hiding something? Michelle Weston, the girl's mother, withdrew first. She stopped answering the phone, locked the bedroom door, and sat for hours at a time by the window facing their backyard garden, sometimes whispering their names. She stopped smiling completely. Her movement slowed as if part of her had been left behind in Silverpine and only a shell had returned home. Greg Weston, their father, went in the opposite direction. He obsessed. For days, then weeks, then months. He took leave from work, bought topographical maps of Silverpine and its surrounding counties, and pinned them across the basement walls. Red yarn stretched from tree clusters to abandoned ranger cabins. He catalogued every missing child case in a 100-mile radius from the past 30 years. Any unusual reports, any unexplained sightings, he copied them, added them to the wall. The media began calling him the man who lives in the map. The cousins stopped visiting. The aunts and uncles offered sympathy that soon became uncomfortable silence. No one wanted to keep grieving what they didn't understand. They feared that perhaps, in time, the Westons would become dangerous in their mourning. Only one person stayed close, Michelle's younger sister, Eva. She was the one who kept groceries stocked and drove Michelle to therapy, even though Michelle never walked through the door. Eva believed something had happened that day which was never properly investigated. The forest didn't just swallow them, she'd say. It kept them. She once told a reporter that the ranger leading the search had been too quick to call off certain sections, too eager to write the girls off as taken by wildlife or worse. By the second year, police funding for the case dried up. It moved into the cold category, files boxed and archived. But Greg never stopped. In 2015, he received a blurry photo through the mail, no return address, just a smudge on the bottom corner. It was a trail camera image, dated 4 months prior. 2 figures in the woods. Blurry. One smaller than the other. The shorter one wore a striped hoodie. The same kind June had owned. Greg drove 7 hours to that trailhead. He camped for 4 days, following the rough path shown in the image. He never found anything. And when he came home, Michelle was gone. Packed a bag. Disappeared for a week. No explanations. When she returned, she was quieter than ever. She began sleeping in the girls' room. Sometimes she lit candles around their empty beds. Eva begged her to stop, but Michelle swore that she had felt them nearby. Not in spirit, in presence. By the 5th year, Greg's wall in the basement had taken over half the house. The kitchen table was stacked with case files, notebooks, even bark samples from Silverpine. He ordered soil testing kits and voice recorders. He claimed the oak tree, that blackened one, was somehow connected to a pattern in the terrain that no ranger had ever spoken about. He even tried to write to local universities. No one responded. The house felt like a slow collapse. Rooms grew dimmer. The refrigerator held more documents than food. The laughter from those early days. Their music, their birthday candles, their sibling jokes, all gone, replaced by the hum of Greg's old desktop scanner. But there was one moment, one final flash of hope, that kept both parents from sinking fully into the void. It was the summer of 2019. Michelle was pruning dead flowers by the garden when she found a folded note buried under the mulch. The ink was smudged, the paper torn, but the handwriting was unmistakably Clara's. "We're okay. But we can't come back yet." No signature. No explanation. Just a drawing beneath it, 2 girls standing beneath an oak tree, holding hands, looking up at a circle of stones. Greg had it analyzed. No match. Police said it was likely a hoax. Someone playing a cruel game. But Michelle knew the loops in the handwriting. The way the lowercase was always too wide. That was Clara's hand. That note was the last time either parent would receive any sign of their daughters. Until 11 years later. When Aaron Locke stepped under the canopy of Silverpine, map in hand, searching not for children, but for a treasure buried beneath a marked pattern of oaks. And when his spade struck something metallic and ancient, etched with a series of spiraling symbols, he knew, this wasn't going to be about gold. It was going to be about the truth. And the truth had been waiting just beneath the roots. In the decade following the girl's disappearance, Silverpine became a place of whispered warnings. Hikers avoided the southern trails near the old ravine. Campers posted odd reviews online, stories of strange sounds at night, of things missing from tents without explanation, of the overwhelming feeling of being watched. The forest grew thicker, as if nature itself conspired to erase the paths that once led to the Weston sisters. Greg Weston followed every story. Every scrap. He tracked rumors like a bloodhound, local legends, missing dogs, an abandoned bicycle by a stream. If it was even remotely close to Silverpine, it earned a pin on his wall. For years, he sent letters to local rangers, forest services, even amateur hikers, asking for information or if they'd seen anything strange near the burnt oak. Most ignored him. Some mocked him. One replied. It was a handwritten letter from a man named Dale Reamer, a former ranger who had worked Silverpine from 1986 to 2003. The letter was brief but pointed. I remember that tree. Burned from within, not without. We reported it once. Management told us to drop it. Said it wasn't our business. But things disappeared around there long before your girls did. I'm sorry. I think you were asking the right questions. Just too late. Greg called the number Dale left. It was disconnected. He tried visiting the return address in Tennessee. The home had been vacant for years. Michelle, who had stopped reading any of Greg's findings by then, only nodded when he told her. It doesn't matter, she'd whispered. They're not in the forest anymore. When he asked her what she meant, she only repeated it, they're not in the forest anymore. But she wouldn't say where she thought they were. In 2020, Greg published a blog detailing every documented disappearance, every oddity near Silverpine. It got little traction, just a few fringe forums and conspiracy theorists. One user commented with a blurry image of stones arranged in a spiral pattern, said to be taken just off a disused trail near the park. Greg recognized the shape. It matched the drawing Clara had included in her final note. The spiral. The circle of stones. He saved the image, emailed the user. No reply. 6 months later, the blog was hacked. His posts deleted. The admin email rerouted to an untraceable domain. The only message left behind was a single phrase. You are not equipped to find them. It broke Greg. He withdrew completely. The red yarns and pins were taken down, folded neatly into boxes. The dining room was emptied. He stopped talking to reporters. He even stopped speaking to Eva. The wall had finally stopped giving answers. But it hadn't stopped watching. Michelle, in her own quiet way, tried to move forward. She planted new flowers in the garden. She even took down the girls' birthday calendars. But some part of her never let go of the oak. That tree had burned into her memory, jagged, blackened, pulsing with something unnatural. She never spoke of it aloud, but every time she dreamed, the same image came. A girl, standing beneath that tree. Her face turned away. Motionless. Waiting. And always, just before waking, Michelle would hear something behind her in the dream. Breathing. Heavy. Animalistic. But never visible. By 2021, the world had moved on. Silverpine welcomed tourists again. The Weston story faded into online rabbit holes and Reddit forums about the girls who walked into the woods and vanished. Greg barely left the house. Michelle tried. Eva moved to Arizona. The last article written about them appeared on a clickbait site titled 13 Creepy Disappearances That Were Never Solved. Clara and June were number 7. Sandwiched between a Cold War submarine mystery and a haunted mine in Utah. Then, 11 years to the day after the picnic, Aaron Locke hiked into Silverpine. He wasn't searching for lost girls. He was a treasure hunter. A self-proclaimed pattern seeker, known in online circles for finding strange geoglyphs, historical caches, and relics using satellite topography and centuries-old survey maps. He had found a strange inconsistency in the tree line near Silverpine, a distortion of the natural grid. A series of tree groupings that didn't align with the natural flow of the landscape. They formed a spiral. He cross-referenced it with an old Civil War-era map. Nothing was marked. But a newer topographical scan from a 1990 forest survey revealed something odd. A massive root bulge beneath a central oak, too structured to be natural. He circled it. The same blackened oak. So he packed his gear. Shovel. Metal detector. Camera. And when his detector pinged near the base of the tree, when he scraped through soil and roots and unearthed a rusted tin capsule etched with concentric circles and faint initials, C+J, he froze. It wasn't gold. It wasn't treasure. It was a message. Inside, he found a scrap of fabric, aged and torn but still faintly striped, just like the hoodie June had been wearing on the day she vanished. And beneath it, a folded piece of paper sealed in wax. He broke the seal. It was a map. Hand-drawn. Simple. But unmistakable. A spiral path through the trees. And at the center, a word written in childish block letters. Hollow. Aaron didn't know the full story yet. But he had just opened a door Greg Weston spent 11 years trying to unlock. And whatever waited inside Hollow had been sealed for over a decade, by the girls themselves. Aaron Locke had never believed in ghosts. He'd chased whispers in the Appalachian foothills and dug up Spanish coins in Oklahoma Creek beds. Most stories were just that, stories. Local legends, exaggerated and repackaged over generations to sell postcards and guidebooks. But the compass he found beneath that blackened oak was not folklore. It was evidence. Rusted, yes, but undeniably real. Its glass was cracked. The needle twitched erratically, as if disturbed by some unseen force underground. He turned it in his gloved hand, slowly, and caught the engraving on the back. To Clara. For when you wander. Dad. Aaron didn't know the name yet. He didn't know that this tiny object, this forgotten birthday gift, had belonged to a girl missing for over a decade. All he knew was that the compass had been buried intentionally, wrapped in cloth, sealed in a tin capsule. Protected. Like a breadcrumb left behind. Alongside it was a folded map. Not a topographical one. Hand-drawn, like something from a child's notebook. The ink had faded, but the spiral pattern was unmistakable. Arrows looped and twisted in circles before stopping at a small X marked in red. Next to it, written in blocky script. Go where the quiet grows loud. Aaron was a practical man. But standing under the canopy of whispering leaves, the ground still damp from recent rain, he felt something, a pressure, like the earth itself was holding its breath. He looked around and saw nothing but the usual forest, oaks, ferns, uneven ground. Still, something had shifted. He could feel it in the air, in the slight electrical hum of his gear. The spiral path on the map didn't match any modern trail. But he knew the area. And that's when it clicked. There was an unmapped footpath near the western slope, one that had been removed from official ranger maps after a flood in the 90s. Locals called it the Low Hollow, an area said to flood fast and stay unnaturally cool, even in summer. He decided to follow the map. He checked the weather forecast, clear skies for the next 2 days. He packed his gear, a lightweight shovel, compact camping supplies, water, food, a solar battery pack for his devices. He also brought a small UV flashlight and a black notebook he always carried for field notes. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He was used to working alone. That evening, he made camp a few miles east of the marked location, just outside the known park boundary. The forest here was thicker, more tangled, as if the trees were older than the soil. At dusk, the wind shifted and carried with it the scent of damp wood and something faintly metallic. He sat by the fire, studying the map again. Every loop of the spiral seemed to represent a real bend in the land, natural ridges, dry creek beds, patches of sharp thorns. But the center wasn't near any trail or elevation marker. It was just, there. At the heart of something forgotten. He turned the compass again. The needle was spinning. At midnight, Aaron was startled awake. Not by a noise, but by silence. A suffocating silence, as if the forest had shut its mouth all at once. No bugs, no wind, no rustle of leaves. Even the fire had dimmed. He sat up, heart thudding. That's when he saw them. Symbols. Faint, glowing marks on the trees around his camp. He scrambled for his UV light and shone it along the bark. Symbols in a spiral pattern, like the ones etched onto the tin capsule, now visible in the ultraviolet glow. He followed them. Slowly. Quietly. Until he reached a small clearing, and there, growing half buried in the roots of a twisted oak, was a stone. Carved. Weather-worn. Marked with initials. C+J. He crouched, brushing away moss. The stone was flat, about the size of a notebook. Beneath it, the dirt was looser. He dug gently, carefully. 3 inches down, his fingers scraped something smooth. Plastic. A bag. Inside, a folded scrap of paper, protected by waxed cloth. He opened it. It was a journal page. The ink was childlike, the letters uneven. This place isn't like the others. We heard the humming again. I think the forest is trying to remember us. I don't know if it's been a day or a year. But June said the light at the center isn't a trap. It's a door. Aaron stood frozen. He didn't know it yet, but this was the first physical evidence tied directly to the Weston sisters. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, he retraced his steps, cross-referencing the journal note with the map. The loops, the center, the direction of the light, it all pointed to one thing. A buried network of tunnels or structures near the spiral center. That afternoon, he reached the spot marked with an X. There was no opening. No door. Just earth. But his metal detector screeched the second he passed it over a patch of lichen-covered stone. Aaron dropped to his knees and began to dig. Within minutes, he uncovered a rusted hinge. Then a panel of rotted wood. Then a hollow sound beneath the soil. He scraped more, revealing a trapdoor, old and sealed shut, with iron bolts and more spiraling symbols etched deep into the wood. He placed his hand on the center. The temperature dropped instantly. And somewhere beneath him, faint, rhythmic, impossible, he thought he heard the sound of breathing. Not human. Not quite. But alive. The door didn't open. Not yet. But Aaron knew now, this wasn't just a forest mystery. It was a buried system. And the Weston sisters hadn't simply disappeared. They had gone inside. From the moment Aaron Locke laid his palm on the center of the trapdoor, the forest changed. The wind died again. The scent of damp soil sharpened, metallic and strange, like old pennies soaked in rainwater. Even the shadows shifted, stretching outward in unnatural shapes that didn't match the angle of the sun. He backed away from the door, heart hammering. He had found a dozen strange things over the years. Buried coins, forgotten war relics, even a sealed diary hidden in a church attic, but nothing like this. Nothing that felt like it was aware of him. Nothing that breathed. The door refused to budge, locked by corrosion or design. He marked the spot on his map and flagged the nearby trees with orange cloth. It was the best he could do until he returned with proper tools. But as he turned to leave, something stopped him. Not a sound. A shape. Just 20 feet behind him stood an oak tree. Taller than the others, thicker in the trunk, its bark darker, almost black, with ridges like scars. At first glance it looked like any other tree. But something about it didn't belong. The angle. The age. The way it stood exactly in the center of the spiral map, even though no such tree had appeared in any of the satellite scans he'd studied. And then he saw it. Carved faintly into the bark near the base, nearly hidden by moss and time. CJ, 2012. Clara and June. The same initials. The same year they vanished. He stepped closer. Ran his fingers over the engraving. The bark beneath was warm. Not from sun exposure, it had been in shade all day, but from something internal. Like a heartbeat beneath the surface. He pressed harder. The tree responded with a low creak, as if shifting. And then, faintly, from somewhere around him, not from any direction he could place, a child's voice. "You're too early." Aaron spun around. Nothing. No birds. No breeze. No footprints. But the voice had been clear. Young. Female. Echoing not through air, but through bone. He stumbled back, chest tight, the hair on his arms standing upright. The tree loomed behind him, silent again. He stared at it for a long time before finally retreating back to camp. As the sun dropped behind the ridge, the forest resumed its sounds, quiet bird calls, rustling leaves, distant owls. But everything felt off-kilter, as though the world had shifted by a fraction of a degree. That night, he couldn't sleep. He opened the compass again. The needle spun lazily in slow, deliberate circles. He read the journal page 3 more times. The words wouldn't leave him. I don't know if it's been a day or a year. The girls were somewhere in there. Alive? He wasn't ready to say. But they had written this. Had left clues. The carvings, the spiral, the map, it was a trail, not just for rescue, but for understanding. Aaron packed up at first light and drove to the nearest town, Everfield, population 1,400. One diner. One sheriff's office. One public library. He sat in the corner of the reading room with his phone on silent, comparing his hand-drawn map with topographic surveys from before the park was formally established. Something jumped out. In the earliest land records from the 1870s, the area now called Silverpine was referred to by another name entirely. The Hollow Reserve. There had been no mention of hiking trails. No campsites. Just one central marker in the middle of the land. Survey anomaly, no growth. It was located exactly where the black oak now stood. Aaron's skin crawled. He scanned forward through the records. The marker disappeared in 1892. No more references to anomalies. No more mention of the hollow. The tree wasn't on any historical record until after 2012. He double-checked the GIS satellite archives. The black oak wasn't there in 2008. But in the 2013 imagery, it was. Fully grown. Towering. A tree like that should have taken decades to reach such size. Aaron sat back in his chair. The tree wasn't just wrong. It was impossible. Later that day, he returned to the park with a crowbar, bolt cutters, a weatherproof recorder, and a portable camera rig. He wanted to open the trapdoor. Wanted proof. But when he arrived at the flagged site, the flags were gone. No trace of the cloth. No marker stone. Even the soil looked undisturbed, as if it had never been dug at all. And the oak. Still there. Still warm. But now, something new. A second engraving, fresh and raw, near the base. Turn back. Aaron stared at it, stunned. He hadn't told anyone where he was going. The markings weren't old. The bark still bled slightly at the edges. And beneath the warning, etched lightly. Too early. Wait for the light. He stepped back. Snapped a photo. Then turned and walked away, his chest tight with a pressure he couldn't explain. A pressure not of panic, but of significance. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was a threshold. And something behind that door, something beneath that oak, was watching the time. Waiting. Just like the sisters had. The following morning, Aaron Locke stood alone at the edge of the low hollow, just beyond the shadow of the black oak. The sun was low, filtering through the canopy in pale shafts. His boots crunched softly over the leaf litter as he scanned the area again. Everything was where it shouldn't be, and nothing was where it should have been. The orange flags he had tied were still gone. The soil he'd dug yesterday now appeared untouched. No sign of his shovel marks, no depression in the dirt. The clearing looked untouched. Almost curated. Like someone, or something, had carefully reset the scene overnight. He dropped to his knees and ran his fingers through the soil. The texture wasn't quite right. It was loose, too soft in places, too fine in others. Beneath a few inches of topsoil, the earth turned oddly pale, laced with veins of white mineral he didn't recognize. Then he saw it. A stone, small, flat, half-buried, just barely visible beneath the roots of a nearby pine. He pried it out slowly and turned it over. A symbol, carved shallow into the surface. A circle divided into 4 quadrants, with a spiral inside. He pulled out his notebook and sketched it immediately. Then, using his UV flashlight, he swept it over the surrounding area. More faint symbols began to glow, on roots, leaves, the underside of fallen branches. Most were spirals, some intersecting, some broken. But others were stranger, boxes inside circles, triangles pointing down, and a series of dots in patterns that looked mathematical. Aaron took dozens of photos. He didn't recognize the symbols, but they reminded him of navigation marks, like the kind used in ancient star maps. Directional cues. One cluster, just off the base of a split birch tree, seemed to form a trail. He followed it. The forest grew denser. Quieter. The light dimmed. And then he saw it, half hidden by leaves and thyme, another carving, larger this time, almost like a totem, rising from a mossy mound. It was a stone column, no more than 3 feet tall, with symbols spiraling up its sides. And near the base, etched carefully. We waited, but the door only opens at the right time. Below that. The hollow doesn't forget. It just resets. Aaron's breath caught. This wasn't a trail left behind in desperation. This was deliberate. The Weston sisters, Clara and June, had left messages. Not just for help, but for someone who could understand the rhythm of the place. The timing. The hollow operated on its own clock, its own set of laws. The compass in his pocket twitched again. He pulled it out. The needle spun, faster now, as if reacting to something below him. He took a step back, looking at the placement of the symbols. Then, like a lightning bolt, it struck him. The spiral wasn't just a shape, it was a sequence. Every set of symbols he had seen so far was part of a countdown. He rushed back to camp, spread out his notes, and began organizing the photographs by location, time, and sequence. Hours passed as the sun moved overhead. By late afternoon, he had arranged the images into a pattern, and there it was. 12 symbols. 12 loops. 12 days. Each one marked in order by subtle changes in shadow direction, leaf decay, and growth around the carvings. Today was day 11. Tomorrow, the 12th loop, the center of the spiral, would align. That was the right time. The compass had been warning him before. He'd arrived too early. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat beside his fire, the journal pages and photos spread around him like a map of something larger than geography. He reread Clara's note, "Wait for the light." What light? He stared at the sky through the canopy. Tomorrow would be the 12th day. The spiral would align. But something still tugged at him, a detail he couldn't grasp. Then, just past midnight, the air changed again. The trees fell still. And in the clearing near the oak, a faint, pulsing glow began to rise from beneath the soil. Soft. Rhythmic. Almost alive. He grabbed his camera and ran to the site. The glow was centered on the spot where the trapdoor had been buried. This time, it wasn't hidden. The soil had sunk slightly, revealing a clear outline of the door. Aaron dropped to his knees and scraped away the earth. The metal hinges glinted faintly in the glow. And this time, when he placed his hand on the surface, the door clicked. Not loud. Not mechanical. But a soft, organic thump, like something breathing behind wood and earth. And then, almost imperceptibly, the door began to lift. Just an inch. Enough to release a smell of old air, stone, and something deeper, like ozone and smoke and time. Aaron stepped back. His camera caught every moment. The spiral was opening. And whatever was beneath the hollow was about to reveal itself. The door creaked open just enough for Aaron to see the edge of a staircase leading downward into total darkness. The glow that had pulsed moments earlier had faded, leaving only the heavy scent of damp stone and something older, ancient, even. He waited, breath held, listening for any sound beyond the first few steps. There was nothing. No wind. No whispers. Just the faintest hum, like a tuning fork pressed to the inside of his skull. He checked his gear. Flashlight, camera, external battery, audio recorder, and compass. The compass needle still spun in slow, dizzying circles. He slipped it into his pocket and gripped the flashlight tightly. With one last look at the sky, he stepped through the door and descended into the hollow. The stone steps were uneven, slick with moisture. Mold crawled in the crevices. The air grew colder with every step, yet never stale. It was as if the place breathed. The walls weren't quite stone and not quite dirt, but something compacted, carved, smoothed by hands long gone. After 20 or so steps, the tunnel opened into a chamber. Aaron stopped at the threshold. The room was circular, about 20 feet across, with arched ceilings held up by thick roots that had pierced through the soil above. Embedded into the walls were niches, small alcoves containing decaying items, toys, worn shoes, folded notes sealed in wax. Some items were burned along the edges. Others looked untouched by time. In the center of the chamber sat a wooden box. Old, blackened by fire, its surface etched with spirals and unfamiliar glyphs. Aaron approached it slowly. His camera recorded everything as he reached out and lifted the lid. Inside were pages, stacked carefully. Journal entries. Most were brittle, some water-damaged. But the topmost sheet was still legible, scrawled in a rushed but determined hand. If you found this, the hollow let you in. That means it's time. We've been waiting. It resets every 12 years. That's the only door. We weren't taken. We were hidden. On purpose. It doesn't hurt here, not like it did outside. The fire was the price. But it let us stay. And it taught us how to watch the pattern. At the bottom. C.W. Clara Weston. Aaron's hands trembled as he turned the next page. A drawing, two girls, older than the photos from the missing persons posters, standing beneath the black oak. One held a stick carved with symbols. The other shaded her eyes, staring up at something bright. Above them, a spiral of birds, caught mid-flight. Another note was attached to the corner of the page. She remembers more than I do. June dreams about things we shouldn't know. Sometimes she speaks words that aren't hers. I think the hollow gave her something. Something it took from someone else. Aaron swallowed hard. The flashlight flickered. He hit it, steadying the beam. The walls around him seemed to pulse gently, like they too were listening. He turned to one of the alcoves and gently removed a burnt scrap of paper wedged between two toy blocks. It looked like a torn page from a book, maybe a field journal. The ink was smeared, but he could make out a partial paragraph. Have returned to the same node after 11.6 years. Behavior consistent with nonlinear displacement. Spatial collapse continues to affect cognition. Subjects appear physically unchanged. The rest was burned away. Aaron took photos of everything, then carefully replaced the items. Before he could explore further, he noticed something, a faint light glowing at the far end of the chamber, from a narrow tunnel leading deeper underground. He followed it. The tunnel narrowed, and the walls became smoother, more intentional. Like someone, or something, had carved it with purpose. The glow intensified until he emerged into another chamber, smaller, more intimate. And in the center sat a mirror. Framed in black wood. Cracked down the middle. Behind the glass shimmered faint reflections, but not his. The surface rippled as though underwater. And within it, fleeting images, the black oak, the spiral, a pair of bare feet running through leaves, and then two girls. One looked older now. 15, maybe 16. Dark-haired, pale, with Clara's familiar sharp eyes. The other sat beside her, humming, rocking slightly, her face blurred by motion. They looked straight into the mirror. Aaron stepped back. The reflection remained. Clara raised her hand. Wrote something on the glass from the inside. He's here. We can start. The glass shimmered again, and then the chamber lights died. The flashlight flickered and went out. Total darkness swallowed everything. And in that blackness, a voice, not from the mirror, not from behind, but from inside his mind, whispered. You've seen what they left. But the next part, must be lived. Then silence. And a single sound. A footstep. Coming up the stairs behind him. Aaron didn't move. The sound of that footstep echoed far louder than it should have in the narrow tunnel. It wasn't fast or aggressive, just one solitary, deliberate step. Like someone pausing between the world of memory and the world of matter. He held his breath and turned slowly, flashlight clutched like a weapon, but the darkness didn't shift. There was no second sound. Just silence thick enough to choke on. The mirror had stopped rippling. Its glass was still cracked, but now it reflected nothing, not Aaron, not the walls, not even the faint shimmer it had displayed before. It was just a dead pane in a world buried beneath the roots of a cursed oak. And still, Aaron felt something watching him. Not malicious. But ancient. He moved back through the tunnel, each footstep echoing hollowly, until he returned to the journal chamber. There, he sat against the wall, his breath ragged, and began leafing carefully through the remaining pages in the blackened wooden box. The handwriting changed over time. At first it was unmistakably Clara's, sharp, hurried, wide loops in her letters. But midway through the stack, the lines grew more delicate, more rhythmic, with strange symbols interspersed in the margins. This was June's hand. And June had changed. Clara keeps trying to mark the days, but I told her it doesn't matter. There aren't days here. Not really. Not unless the hollow wants them. Sometimes we wake up in sunlight. Sometimes in snow. But we never feel cold. I haven't felt cold since the first night. Isn't that strange? I don't think we were supposed to come here. I think we interrupted something. Another page. There's a light that comes through the roots sometimes. Not white. Not yellow. Green and gold, and humming. Clara doesn't like it. She says it pulls at her thoughts. But I see pictures. Faces. Places I've never been but somehow remember. Once, I saw Dad's desk drawer. The note I left him. He never found it. Aaron's eyes stung. He blinked hard and turned the page. What he found next was a drawing, dozens of them, layered on top of one another. Spiral upon spiral. Roots wrapping around a central eye. Beneath it, written in thick pencil. The hollow is not a place. It's a memory trying to stay alive. A chill passed through him, deep and sudden. He flipped another page. Clara thinks the hollow made itself sick. Like it held too many people for too long and now it forgets where it put them. She said we're echoes that got caught in the wrong walls. But I still remember Mom's voice. And sometimes, if I press my ear to the floor, I can hear someone crying in the dirt. And then, finally, something that stopped Aaron cold. There will be a man. He'll bring the key. He won't mean to open the door, but the hollow will know him. Because he's curious. Because he walks where the map folds. When he finds the mirror, we'll be able to try again. Just once. Just one more cycle. Please tell him not to be afraid of the light. Below it, in careful block letters. Tell Aaron we forgive him for being late. Aaron dropped the journal. He couldn't breathe. His heart slammed against his ribs, and his vision tunneled. How did they know his name? How could they have written this 11 years ago, unless time didn't move here the way it should? Unless the hollow wasn't linear. He staggered to his feet and shone his flashlight around the chamber. The mirror was gone. Vanished. The tunnel he had entered through was now a solid wall of twisted roots. He was sealed in. Not in a trap. But in a threshold. He turned back to the box, fumbled through the final pages, desperate now. Desperate to understand. Tomorrow is the 12th. If it doesn't work, we'll go deeper. But if you find this, if you're reading this now, it means something finally aligned. Please tell Mom we weren't scared. We chose this. We made it a door. The chamber pulsed again. A low hum began to rise from beneath the floor, like vibrations from deep machinery. The compass in his pocket burned suddenly hot. He pulled it out, it wasn't spinning anymore. It was pointing. Directly toward a wall on the far side of the room. Aaron followed the needle and placed his hand on the wall. The stone shimmered, no longer solid but fluid, like heavy smoke wrapped in tree bark. A voice spoke from behind it. June's voice. You have to remember the way out. That's the part they always forget. The wall thinned. Aaron stepped through. And what he saw on the other side wasn't darkness. It was a vast, root-choked expanse of stone corridors, flickering with green-gold light. In the center stood a platform, and on it, a figure, tall, still, cloaked in shadow. It raised its head. And from behind it, two girls emerged. Clara and June. But not as children. Older. Eyes strange. Calm. June stepped forward and said. The hollow kept us because we were willing to remember. Are you? Aaron couldn't speak. Because in that moment, every thought, every doubt, every timeline collapsed. And the hollow finally opened its mouth to speak. Aaron Locke stood frozen on the threshold of a realm that should not exist. Before him, the world shimmered with quiet pulses of light, veins of bioluminescence winding through the roots like constellations trapped underground. The space beyond the wall was not a chamber, not exactly. It was alive, a network of organic tunnels and cathedral-like hollows, stitched together with memory and time and something deeper, unknowable. Clara and June stood beside the cloaked figure at the center of the clearing. They looked older, mid to late teens, but somehow unchanged. Their clothes were faded but intact. Their eyes glowed faintly with the same green-gold hue that bled through the roots around them. Clara held something in her hand, what looked like a shard of the cracked mirror, still pulsing gently. June watched Aaron intently, as if studying a stranger and a brother in the same breath. Aaron stepped forward slowly, heart pounding, voice caught in his throat. "Is it really you?" he finally asked, barely above a whisper. Clara nodded. "Yes. But not just us." June added softly, "The hollow took us in when the world forgot how to see. It taught us how to listen." "To what?" Aaron asked. "To the echoes," June said. "They're everywhere down here. Pieces of people. Pieces of time." The cloaked figure turned its head slightly, but it did not speak. It radiated the same pressure Aaron had felt since entering, the presence of something vast and incomprehensible, as if the land itself had worn a face for his benefit. Aaron stepped onto the root-covered floor of the chamber, watching how the ground seemed to pulse beneath his boots. "Why now?" he asked. "Why me?" Clara tilted her head. "Because you came at the right time. And because you kept looking, even when the hollow tried to turn you away. You passed the marker," June said, more solemnly. "The one most people forget." "What marker?" "Doubt." Clara answered. "Most lose themselves the moment they begin to question if this place is real. That's when the hollow erases them. But you," she paused, eyes narrowing with something like sadness. "You doubted yourself, but not us." Aaron's breath hitched. The hollow had chosen him. Or maybe the girls had. Or maybe, both. He looked toward the figure. "What is it?" Clara turned to it too, her voice soft now. "We don't know. We think it was once a place of memory. Of safety. Something ancient people made, maybe by accident. A refuge. Or a trap. But it's broken now," June said, her tone dull. "It forgets its purpose. It swallows things to try and remember them again." "And you've been trapped here?" Aaron asked. Clara shook her head. "Not trapped. At least, not like you think. We stayed because we had to finish something." Aaron took another step. "Then why the messages? Why the journal?" "So someone would know we weren't gone," said June. "So someone would hear the echo." Aaron opened his pack and pulled out the journal, its blackened cover still warm. He held it out to Clara. She took it carefully, a strange expression crossing her face, pride and grief and relief tangled into one. "It still remembers," she whispered, and the hollow pulsed softly around them, as if in acknowledgement. Aaron looked around. "Is there a way back?" Clara turned to June. They exchanged a look. "There's always a way back," June said. "But you don't go through the hollow." Clara continued, "You go through yourself. Through what you carry." Aaron felt something shift behind his ribs. Not pain. A weight. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the compass, still, finally, no longer spinning. It pointed directly at the girls. June stepped closer, eyes locked on the compass. "That was the first door. It brought you here. But now the hollow needs a memory to bind itself to. It's bleeding into the world, and we have to close the echo loop before it slips completely. What do I have to do?" Clara reached out and placed her hand over his. "Give it a truth. One that hurts." Aaron hesitated. "The truth?" He closed his eyes, and the words came. "I never forgave myself for letting go." The chamber darkened for a moment. The ground rumbled, low and slow, like an exhale from the earth's lungs. The cloaked figure raised one hand, and the green light returned, stronger this time, coiling up the walls, the roots, the ceiling. It flowed into the compass in Aaron's hand, which glowed, then cracked with a sharp ping, its glass shattering, its needle dropping limp. Then Clara smiled. You closed the loop. Suddenly, Aaron was back in the first chamber, the wooden box beside him, the journal in his lap, the mirror gone. Only now, the trapdoor above had creaked fully open. He rushed to the ladder, climbed into the daylight, and emerged back in the forest clearing. The air was crisp, clean, full of birdsong and wind. The black oak was gone. Not cut. Not burned. Never there. He stumbled forward, dizzy, and turned back. The spiral markings had vanished from the earth. The symbols, the carvings, the faint glow, all gone. But clutched in his hand was a photograph he hadn't taken. Two girls. Clara and June. Standing beneath a tree that no longer existed. Smiling. Free. And scrawled on the back, in careful handwriting. For Dad. We remembered. Aaron Locke emerged from the woods with the photograph still in his hand, his boots caked in hollow soil, his breath fogging despite the summer warmth. His truck was exactly where he had left it. The world above had moved on without him. Birds chirped. Distant traffic droned. Time, it seemed, had not noticed he was gone. But he had changed. In the rearview mirror, he looked the same. Same stubble, same dark eyes. But behind those eyes now flickered something else, a reflection of something not meant to be remembered. A memory that didn't belong to him entirely. And yet, it pulsed in his mind like a second heartbeat. He returned to his motel in silence. No music. No calls. He locked the door behind him and spread the evidence out on the bed, the journal, the burnt fragments, the broken compass, the photograph. He stared at the smiling girls in the photo. Clara and June. Older than when they vanished. But real. Undeniably real. He uploaded the photos to a private drive. Then he wrote everything down. Every detail. Every whisper. Every impossible thing he'd seen in the hollow. He planned to release it all. Let the world know. Let the families know. But that night, when he tried to send the files, his internet cut out. Then the lights. Then his phone powered off, screen flickering with lines of static before dying altogether. He stared at the blank screen. And then the knock came. 3 slow taps at the motel door. He opened it. A woman stood there, early 40s, gray sweater, clipboard tucked under one arm. No car in the lot. No sound of footsteps. She wore a lanyard that read, Department of Ecological Records. I'm here to talk about your recent, field excursion, she said politely. Aaron stiffened. I don't know what you mean. She smiled, gentle, measured. Yes, you do. You found something that should have stayed closed. Aaron stepped back instinctively. Who are you? Think of me as a conservationist, she said. But not for wildlife. For thresholds. She walked into the room without asking. Looked at the items on the bed. The hollow didn't close behind you, she said softly. It reopened. Briefly. That means others will find it now. Unless we guide them, or stop them. Aaron stared, heart pounding. You knew it was there. We knew it used to be there, she replied. Until the last cycle collapsed. But when you went in, when the sisters reached out, it rethreaded. That place feeds on memory and timing. It stitched itself back together. And now, it's hungry again. She sat at the table and looked up at him. We're offering you a choice. Aaron didn't respond. She continued. You can go public. Tell the world. Upload everything. Make a documentary. Maybe write a book. But then we erase it. You. All of it. He blinked. Or, she said, tilting her head, you can help us map it. Understand it. Watch the patterns before it opens again. Aaron swallowed hard. And the girls? She nodded. They're alive. In a way. Part of it now. Anchors. That place needs minds. It took theirs. But they also shaped it. Without them, it's just a broken maze. And me? You're the echo it listened to. The last memory it trusted. Aaron looked down at the photograph. The handwriting on the back. We remembered. He made his choice. 2 days later, Aaron Locke disappeared. No one knew where he went. His motel room was left untouched, except for a single manila envelope on the pillow containing one item. The photo of Clara and June. Smiling. Behind them, the spiral tree, still pulsing faintly. And across the bottom, newly written in thick black ink. There will be others. 6 months after Aaron Locke vanished, Silverpine National Park quietly shut down a 10-square-mile radius due to unstable soil conditions. No press releases. No major news coverage. Just orange mesh fencing, closed trails, and a single line buried deep in a PDF on the Department of Parks and Land Management's website. Most people didn't notice. But some did. Among them was Haley Green, a graduate student from Oregon State, researching synthetic folklore and local legends for her thesis. She had been tracking the story of the Weston sisters for years, ever since her older cousin, a park ranger in Everfield, had shown her the original missing posters. There was something about the case that had always gnawed her. The lack of footprints. The compass they found decades later. The journal entries that no one ever confirmed existed. And now, there was the name Aaron Locke. He hadn't posted a new treasure hunting video in over half a year. His website had gone dark. Forums speculated he'd gone off-grid, joined some secret expedition, or died in the woods chasing a myth. But Haley had found something different, a time-stamped blog comment Locke left under an obscure Hollow Earth theory post. One sentence. Dated 2 days before his disappearance. Sometimes the spiral turns toward you. She dug deeper. Satellite images of the Silverpine region showed something strange, a small clearing that hadn't existed in earlier years. It appeared in the 2013 scan, vanished in 2015, then returned again, recently. Just a week ago. Same size. Same spot. She zoomed in. In the center of the clearing, a shape. Round. Dark. Almost organic. The spiral. Haley packed her gear that night. She didn't tell anyone. When she arrived in Everfield, the weather had turned. The trees were skeletal. The wind howled unnaturally through the branches. But she didn't feel fear, only a strange anticipation, like she had come home to a place she had never visited. The trail markers had been stripped, but she had Aaron's maps, downloaded from a cached page someone had mirrored before the site went offline. The spiral was there. The same loops. The same X at the center. By dusk, she stood at the edge of the clearing. The grass was flattened in strange patterns. In the center, the oak had returned. Dark. Tall. Wrong. At its base, something glinted in the low light. She walked slowly toward it. It was a compass. Shattered. Its needle gone. And beside it, half buried in the soil, was a sealed envelope. She tore it open, heart pounding. Inside was a note, handwritten, in faded ink. If you're reading this, the hollow opened again. And it called you. You won't find us unless it wants you to. But you can still listen. The light will return. And when it does, you'll have 12 days. Remember, the map folds when the world forgets. No signature. But she didn't need one. She knew it was from Aaron. That night, she made camp just outside the clearing. And just before dawn, the wind stopped. The ground warmed. And the spiral in the earth began to glow. The light returned. And with it, the echoes. Haley Green did not sleep that night. The glowing spiral in the earth pulsed with a rhythm she couldn't describe, like a breath, or a heartbeat, or a memory calling itself back into existence. The forest around her remained unnaturally quiet. Even her breath felt intrusive in the stillness. She sat at the edge of the clearing, notebook open in her lap, writing by headlamp, though she barely had to look. Her hand moved on instinct, transcribing impressions more than observations. She wasn't just watching something awaken. She was remembering. Memories not hers flickered behind her eyes. 2 girls, chasing dragonflies. A father standing by a fire, calling names no one answered. A man in a motel room, drawing spirals in the dark. The hollow had stored them all. Now, it was returning them. As dawn broke, golden light spilled through the trees, but it didn't touch the clearing. Instead, the spiral brightened with a green-gold glow, shimmering across the ground, illuminating new patterns beneath the oak. Glyphs. Letters. Math. Emotion in form. Haley stepped closer. The ground was soft, pliable, almost breathing beneath her boots. The oak's bark had shifted again, revealing names she hadn't seen before. Dozens of them. Some she recognized: Clara Weston, June Weston, Aaron Locke. Others were strangers. Some were written in languages she couldn't read. She placed her palm on the spiral's center. The clearing shifted. The world tilted, not physically, but contextually. The trees seemed to fall backward, and the roots peeled open like petals. She wasn't falling. She wasn't moving at all. But she was descending. She found herself standing in the hollow, not the one Aaron had walked, not exactly. This version pulsed with different memories, ones shaped by her. Her questions. Her grief. Her fears. A soft humming filled the chamber. In front of her stood a mirror. No cracks. No ripples. Just light. And in its reflection, 2 girls. Not children. Women. Clara and June, standing tall, dressed in white and moss and memory. Clara stepped forward and spoke, not aloud, but directly into Haley's thoughts. You brought it back the right way. Through remembrance. You saw what was forgotten. Haley felt her chest tighten. I don't understand. Why me? June smiled faintly. Because you were listening. Even when no one else did. Clara reached out and touched the mirror. The image shifted. A spiral of faces. Aaron. The girls. Haley's own reflection. A loop of seekers. Echoes building on echoes. Each of them part of a thread, weaving something the hollow had lost long ago. A mind. June stepped closer now. It's not just a place. It's a memory trying to stabilize itself. The world is too loud now. Too fast. The hollow wants to hold still. And people like you help it do that. Haley's voice trembled. What do I do now? Clara turned to her and said simply. You remember. You protect it. You make sure the story never dies again. The mirror brightened, brilliant, blinding, and then shattered soundlessly. Haley awoke with a start at the edge of the clearing. No spiral. No glow. But the tree remained. And in her hand, curled like a forgotten leaf, was a journal page. It read. The hollow doesn't just take. It teaches. It chooses listeners. Echo carriers. Pattern watchers. You are one now. She packed her things slowly, carefully. No rush. The sun was rising properly now, casting honest light over the forest. Birds chirped again. A squirrel rustled somewhere nearby. The world had resumed. But Haley had not. She walked back to the ranger station in Everfield and mailed the photograph, Clara and June beneath the black oak, to the Weston family, along with a single note. They remembered. You should too. She never spoke publicly about what she saw. But in quiet corners of the internet, she began uploading spiral maps. Coordinates. Unexplained anomalies. Field guides labeled, for those who hear the echo. Others found them. And as the 12th year turned once again, new spirals began to appear across the world. Because the hollow was never just a place. It was a pattern. And the spiral, finally, remembered.